I recognize that it's lunch, it's 12. Thanks everyone for joining us. I'm a new face, I'm Megan, which I actually realizing I have logged in with the Rainforest account, so you can see, I see why I have to rename myself, but I am substituting for Bridget today as she's off on her course. Bear with me. I'm going to be running the back end as well as sharing some information around leadership. So I'm just going to share my screen here, and we will get started with the initial thing. Welcome to Rainforest if you haven't been here before. This is such a fun hour of networking, and so please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat as we go through the first few slides to introduce the Rainforest here. Going to share my screen and my sound. There we go. Okay. So at the beginning here, in the spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge that we live, work, and play on the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy, Siksika, Kainai, Piikani, and the Tsuut'ina, the Nakota Nations, the Métis Nation Region 3, and all people who make their homes in the Treaty 7 region of Southern Alberta. If you are from other areas, please feel free to add in the chat where your treaty home is. For those in the Edmonton area, we acknowledge the traditional lands of the Treaty 6 territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, Nakota, Sioux, as well as the Métis. These are sacred gathering places.
Everything just froze. When did it stop?
I think when
during
you
your
presented.
acknowledgement, your land acknowledgement.
And then I couldn't actually. I had to restart my entire laptop, so I'm on my other one. But
no
it's
problem.
never happened. Oh, thanks so much for taking over.
Yeah, we were able to entertain ourselves. We have a great group, so it wasn't actually very hard to do.
Good.
Thanks, everyone. Back to Megan.
Do we want to watch the video and pull that up, or do we want to keep going? Let's keep going. Okay. All right. So
and Megan, what was the topic today?
So today the topic is on leadership. And so initially we'd had a guest speaker set up. They initially couldn't make it. And then I was doing I had offered to help host this for Bridget. And my background also happens to be in leadership. So we had put out an ask to the group last week to say, are you interested in learning about leadership? Want to do some networking and talk about leadership? And so that's what we are going to do today. And yes, absolutely. We should do this. So did it cut off? You didn't hear any of the land acknowledgement at all?
You had just started that. Okay. Or perhaps just finished it, but please.
All right.
We just finished the land acknowledgements for Calgary and Edmonton, and then you said anybody that lives elsewhere, blah blah blah. So it's that part's done.
Okay, so we did it. Okay. All right. I do it, but I can't pronounce everything. Yes, there's a great video online that you can find that will help you pronounce those things as well. So if you haven't checked that out, that would be great. Okay, I'm not going to share it just because I'm slowly coming up on my screen here. But what I will say is that these are sacred gathering places that provide us with an opportunity to engage in and demonstrate leadership on reconciliation. So thank you so much for your enthusiasm joining us here today. If you haven't been at Rainforest before, we often show a video, which I did show, but nobody saw it because I was clearly booted out. There are some great scorecards that Rainforest releases based on an assessment they do every year. So recently, there was the new report released. And so one of the things that comes up on there is around leadership. And so I thought we would talk about that today. So I wanted to share with you something about, I'll share a little bit about me within this presentation. Actually, I'm just here able to access it, so that's good. So what I might do is come on as a guest because I don't have it on the other computer. So just give me a moment here. And so what I thought we would do today is I'll share just some conversation starters around leadership. And then I have a few breakout room conversations that we can have. Then we'll come back together. So this will be kind of the first 40 minutes of us together. And then at around 22, the hour. So at 12:40 or 12:45, we will then break out into our usual networking rooms as well. Does that sound good? Yes? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so give me one moment here because now I'm working between two computers. And I am going to log into Zoom as myself and give myself hosting responsibilities. Look at me, I'm the technology crazy. Okay. Thanks for your patience.
Off the cover. You don't need to be on the cover.
Recording in progress.
It's almost working or not.
There we go. Can you hear me?
Yay.
Yay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. We did that successfully. Okay, here I go. I'm going to share my screen now. Geez, I have hosted Zoom meetings, company Zoom meetings for like 500 people, and my computer has not crashed ever. So this is so.
Is it a Windows machine?
Yes.
Well, it's probably because they want you to go from version 10 to version 11. I noticed mine is starting to get blinky and flaky too.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you so much for your patience. So a little bit about me, because I know I've said my name is Megan. I currently work with Sait, the Catalyst Group. And the reason I have a file folder picture on my screen is really represents my journey and why I'm so interested in this topic about leadership, the past, the present, and the future. And so I had just completed my master's in industrial organizational psychology, which is the science of people at work. And I was very excited to join my first role in an oil company. And I'd been hired to develop some leadership programs and leadership thinking around succession planning for the organization. So we were developing a model for leadership. We pulled it all together. And we thought it was great. It was going to be the model that got us into the future. And then I was going through some old documentation on the shared drive, and I came across a file folder dated, I think it was about 1990. And I thought, this is interesting, leadership development 1990. I'd love to see what this looks like. So I open it up, and it has the entire leadership program that had been running previously in this organization that I hadn't been aware of. And so I went through, I was looking at it. And what struck me is that a lot of the concepts we were teaching people back in 1990 were very similar to this model we thought was so fancy and new that we needed for the future of leadership within the organization. And this was, so it felt like a deja vu moment for sure. And I actually have not been able to shake this throughout my entire career, throughout different organizations, as I go through the literature, as I continue to read about leadership, and that it often feels like things have been done before. And, it's sort of this definition of insanity and doing something the same way and expecting different results. We continue to repeat ourselves. We use different terms, but generally, a lot of it feels the same. We're circling around the same problem. We try different things, trying to address the same problem, but we may not even really understand this problem. So this is what I am keen about, I'm interested in. It has brought me sort of through various organizations, building talent programs, building leadership development programs. I'm currently working on my PhD in leadership and well-being, and has kind of pushed me over to the other side around context and how do we connect leadership to the context that we're in. And so now I'm getting to do a lot of that work within the Catalyst group over at Sait, where we're starting to examine what is some of the digital mindset and the digital leadership skills, or the leadership skills we need to help people thrive within a digital future. So off a very strong theme of leadership across my career. So I'm keen on the topic, and I'm very excited to hear about what you think. So what I want to put out here is this idea of leadership version 4 to the power of who knows what. We've had a lot of versions of leadership, and I'm curious to hear from you what you think is going to be the next version. And will it be, or can it be, something totally different than what we've experienced in the past? So where are we going today? What I'm hoping to really walk through is kind of this central problem, which I love this quote from E.O. Wilson around the real problem of humanity is the following. We have Paleolithic emotions. We're basically Neanderthals still in how we connect with each other. Medieval institutions that haven't kept up with the godlike technology that is quickly changing our context and the reality in which we're in together. So how did we get into this place today? What I want to do is take you on a little bit of a journey. We're going to start in 9500 BCE, but I promise this is a very fast timeline in how we kind of get through here. And what I want to do is highlight, using the colors that I've here, is around how what's happening within our context and how godlike technology is shifting the revolutions that we've encountered as humans. Where the Paleolithic emotions, or what we are sometimes using as leadership, has then tried to match that context. And also then, what are some of the labor movements and work thinking that is coming into the workplaces and really continuing to make our institutions feel medieval, and how might we break free from that? So let's start. This is going to be a very fun journey, and then we're going to have some conversations about it after. And please feel free to share in the chat if you like. I'm trying to kind of manage multiple things on my screen here. But yes, if you have some questions, let's feel free to even raise your hand. I'm totally informal with this, and I love a good conversation as well. Okay, so 9500 BCE is generally where people are estimating humans started to do agriculture. So this is really when folks move from nomadic lifestyles, where they're starting to settle and be together and grow into larger communities of people. And so some of the early leadership styles that were coming into play were these kind of command and control. So enforcing social order through chiefs, and also empires, where they're building these bureaucracies, as well as organized religion really coming into these bureaucracy things. And the key theme of the day here is power by control and fear, and setting out these rules and how we play by them, and the black and white, right and wrong. Okay, so this is a huge
Sorry, is that where we are right now on the
Yeah.
planet, or was this before?
What do you say, Peter? Are you having some deja vu? Yeah. I think this is what is so fascinating about this, is that you are going to see commonalities across this whole thing. And I'm going to put forward a provocation on whether we're thinking about this all wrong. Okay, so this dotted line is a long period of time. And so then take us over into sort of 1700, where we hit kind of the peak of the agricultural revolution. We're starting to get even more settlement. We're looking at crop rotation, selective breeding, which is then bringing on this mass food production into play. So people are coming together and they're speeding up. And that quickly progresses in a very, very short time span into that first industrial revolution, where we're looking at the rise of steam power. We've taken the food production and the things we've learned about crop rotation, and we've mechanized production entirely. We've increased efficiency. And so we're looking at this going, we've got machines that are efficient. People need to be efficient too. And so typically here, what we were often seeing was about, folks were generally working 70 to 100 hours. And oftentimes this is attributed to Ford. But what's really interesting is that it was in 1817, an individual named, oh gosh, I just lost his name here.
Mr. Owen.
Sorry?
Mr. Owen.
Mr. Owen, yes. was definitely Mr. Owen. He was the one who started to posit the 8-8-8 on the work days. So 8 hours of work, 8 hours of rest, and 8 hours of play. And so this early on, this is about 100 years before Ford in 1905 actually incorporated that as an expectation around 8 hours of work and 5 days of work. 5 days at 8 hours a day. And so 100 years earlier, people are starting to realize, wait a second, people are not machines. We might not want to work them to that extent. Yeah, when do we get 8 hours of play? Good question. Are we back to the 70 to 100 hours of work that we were trying to break free of in the 1700s? Okay, so let's keep going. So then the second industrial revolution quickly follows the first. So that's in about 100 years. We start to look at electrical power, mass production through factories. So we've kind of mechanized production. Now we've moved that into larger systems, and the decreased need for skilled workers becomes the issue of the day. And so it's 1871. You start to then get these labor movements coming into the work context, where you have Trade Union Act going, wait a second, what about the skilled workers, and asking for some unionization there. Oh, it's Robert Owen, that's who it was. He coined the term 888. We've also got 1898, where the United Mine Workers, they won 8 hours of work days for folks. So this is starting to heat up, where you're starting to see some massive labor movements. This is also when you start to see Ford come into play and go, okay, yes, we understand that efficiency is important, but humans and their health are also important. We're going to only ask people to work 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. And this was huge. This was very, very different than what people were used to and celebrated as a win for humans and work. So as we start to kind of evolve and the impacts of efficiency and humans and efficiency come to the forefront within workplaces, you're starting to get a lot of theories around, well, how do we maximize efficiency and control for efficiency? So you have Frederick Taylor's scientific management theories of 1909. And if you ever get a chance or you just want to nerd out on vacation one day, Frederick Taylor's scientific management book is not very big. It's a quick read, and it is very interesting in a historical context. And so what he did was look at, what is the most efficient way to get workers to move the most amount of bricks as possible within a factory. And he would time them and time their movements, time their rest and recover, which would be within like minutes, and then ask them to continue moving. And he would test it to the point where he felt he had a very clear formula for how quickly people can move these things. And what he doesn't obviously mention in his book is, because his book is quite celebrated as, this was amazing at the time. This is, matching human efficiency to the machines. A lot of the factories he went to go help resulted in going into some massive strikes after he was there. So labor movements that did not stop for a while. So I think we can all decide whether or not he was successful. 1914 was the first performance reviews that came about that actually look very similar to the ones we incorporated to organizations today. This was the onset of World War I. This is where military started to get into the conversation around how do we match people to the right jobs, the right skills, and make sure that they're performing in the way that we need them to, and then how do we fairly get them out or move them around. Then we've got theory of bureaucracy. So we have Weber's theory there around 1922 going, okay, we have to organize all these efforts. What does that look like? So lots of organization with a focus on efficiency. So this is where one of the first formal leadership theories starts to be born. So it's the trait era is what we often refer to it. So this is where the thinking centered around this idea that leaders are born. They are born with a certain composition of traits, and we just have to find who they are and place them in the hierarchical structure. Okay, so that theory was first on the scene. And then it was quickly followed by behavioral era and these behavioral traits where, okay, maybe not all leaders are born perfectly as is, but we can help leaders and shape them. So here are some of the core leadership styles that are required. And this is what we're going to do to help shape them. So you can see kind of that connection from this idea of the right composition of traits to, okay, here's the traits, here's the styles, and we are going to shape leaders. Does this sound familiar with what we do a lot of today? Still, yeah. So we're looking back here, a long history of these things that are still around today. And
I think they're talked of and not necessarily executed.
Yes. Tell me more.
Oh, I know. I used to work for a large company, and they talked about that. They talked about when you're trying to set people up for the future of when other people leave, succession planning, all those kinds of things. And I'm like, I don't see you guys doing any of this stuff.
Right. Yeah. So there's this talk about performing these very old leadership theories, and even then we're not necessarily doing them. So interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you can come to Rainforest and brag about how you actually have culture like 40, 50, 60 years after, and it's still a bragging point.
Yeah. There's a quote that I love where it's, there's as many cultures in an organization as there are leaders. So, okay, so we have the behavioral era. We start to go, okay, yeah, more people can come to this party, even if they don't have the traits. We're going to bring them in. We're going to develop them. That's when you start to get Peter Drucker, who has coined the term knowledge workers, where we're getting more folks who are out of the factories and into the thinking. And it's also where performance reviews get their best friend development plans together. So they start to go, how do we then connect behavioral era to these development plans? So then we get into the 1960s, where we start to see leadership theory around situational. So we realize, okay, we've focused on the person. How do we then move to the context? And so starting to think about, okay, well, we've got certain styles that work, but they don't work in every context. And so we talk a lot about how environment impacts leadership, and how do we purpose build or connect leaders to context. Then the third industrial revolution comes about. So this is where we start to see the automation of production. Innovation becomes the key word of the time, continues to be, and meritocracy is strongly linked in our culture to success. And that is how we often align leaders to their roles. So this is where we then start to see transactional theories of leadership come into play, where we look at how do leaders connect with employees. So there's leader-member exchange theories. There's a focus on equity as it comes to this meritocracy in our culture, and this idea of what is a manager versus what is a leader, and a lot of time spent on distinguishing between the two and how they might be different. Okay, still with me?
Yep.
Yes, we're going to speed up. So then 1978, this is when the transformational era of leadership theory comes into play. And this continues to be the leading and most researched leadership theory today by leadership academics. So this is related to purposeful leadership. And they're really focused on sort of this charisma, this motivation, this person who stands up and creates this ideal of what we want to see. So I'm sure you can think of some examples within our tech ecosystem around the world that would highlight some of these characteristics, and also highlight for us the drawbacks, a little bit of what you might see. So think about Steve Jobs as one example. Any others? Charismatic leaders.
Elon Musk.
There you go. Great example. Okay, so that's where you also start to see within organizations the first mention of vision statements coming into play. So 1980 was when we first started talking about vision statements. Apple was one of the first companies to come out with a vision statement, quickly followed by Sony was the other one. And then you start to see the term gig economy was coined in 2009 by a New Yorker editor, Tina Brown, but originally was actually something referred to by jazz musicians around the 1914 time. So there you go. Okay, now we are at 2015. We have the conversations happening now around, is this a fourth revolution? there's microprocessors, internet computing is all coming into play. This is the digital fusion, or how are these technologies combining? And really the name of the game right now is around embedded connectivity, this widespread technological use, and some of these different ways of how we're connecting socially as humans. So where does that leave us today? So lots of theories coming into play around leadership that in addition to transformational leadership, which is still very commonly used, there's servant leadership, inclusive, complexity, collaborative leadership. I'm sure you've seen a lot of other versions of leadership. And we're also coming out of this global pandemic, 2020, and the Great Resignation, which we're all talking about. So these sort of this interesting confluence of things happening where we're at this inflection point of what is leadership, where are we entering into this fourth revolution, and people just not feeling healthy, and sort of this key kind of awakening and inflection point. Yeah. Okay, so what I want to do is send you all into these kinds of things, because as you'll see, these things change, they show up, they're all enforced in this context. So what I want to do is I want to break down the pieces and let's talk about this current context, the yellow, the fourth revolution. And as V mentions, yes, it is, we are here, we're happening already, Industry 4.0. And so what does that mean about the context? So we're going to go into some breakout rooms. I'm going to kind of send you in there for you all to chat in smaller groups so everyone has a chance. What words would you use to describe the context we are living in right now? So I'm just going to, while I kind of get that set up, I want you to think about that. And we'll go into some rooms. I'm going to do 7. Okay, here we go. I'm going to open the rooms quickly, and then we will come back in about 5 minutes. Here we go. What words
Awesome.
would you
Thank you.
use to describe the context we are living in right now? Did you get booted out, Dave?
I was temporarily offline. Is it
Okay, I'm going to send you back in. Okay.
Nothing happening.
Nothing happening. Okay, let me try this. Oh, here we go. I know why, because I had it on your audio is separate from your, there we go.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back. So, what are some of the words you heard? I'd love to hear them in the chat. Or
Javier really knocked it out of the park with our sessions. He used the word, Javier, I don't want to steal your thunder. Go for it.
Sorry, I have to mute myself. I was talking about these complex times that what we lack is the flow. So, so you see in business that we get so many disruptions and we're missing this. I agree with Martin that is transitional, but I hope so.
In my group, in my group, we started talking about how crowds affect things. So yeah, more like populace, because like nowadays, like not just politics, but a lot of things are affected by social media and like what the crowd thinks. And there's often like companies and politicians or leaders have to actually bend to the crowd because the crowd opinion is so strong now and so big.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some really interesting writing around employee activism and the impact of employee activism within organizations, which I'll find I can pull those links for everyone. Some great conversations there. Yeah, and so you're hearing about some of the stronger voices and the way some of the social media algorithms can amplify those voices that may not necessarily be representative of the general population as well. I'm seeing a lot of stuff in here. So there's lots of opportunity, fractured, risk, alignment, some values, company values are personal, VUCA, yeah, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, environment, empowering, uncertain, transformative. So lots of exciting things. And oftentimes within the context, this social, technological, we're talking about environment, the economy, political factors are sometimes not within our control. And so then we start to go, okay, well, this is the context. So what is the leadership characteristics that are needed to steer our future? And I was going to send you into breakout rooms, but I want to be mindful of time. So I thought, let's have that conversation here in this room. And then I'll close off with add in some of my own thoughts and what I'm thinking, and then we can have some Q&A and go into some final networking conversations, because I want to make sure we have time for that. So tell me, what do you think are the leadership characteristics that are needed to steer our future?
I think
go ahead.
So I think leaders need to be courageous.
Great word.
So in my experience, I'll talk to a lot of CEOs, and a lot of them have a vision of they want to do something different. They see that there's a bunch of inefficiencies and the way they could be more competitive, but they don't have the appetite to drive the change and the innovation that they need. And I think largely, especially in Calgary, we've been hit with 2015. So we've had commodity prices. There's a mass exodus of thought leaders that have left, and then after COVID. So I think COVID, there's all this uncertainty, which has led to people. I think most people have some trauma, and what we're looking for and what we're seeing, what I'm seeing, is that there's a vacuum in most organizations where if you'd have a vision and be able to translate that vision down to your organization, I really think that there's an opportunity for leaders here to actually redevelop and redesign what we're doing.
Great. Love that. Thanks, Steve. So courage, vision, this kind of empathy for what people are going through right now. Love that. Sabrina.
Yeah, I think another one of the qualities is the ability to build people and really recognize and leverage talents of those around you. Right now, we've gone through this like transcendental collective trauma, like Steve was saying there, that has really shaken the confidence of a lot of people, right? So getting back into a more innovative environment, it's like, well, no, going back to normal really might not be the right answer. It's how do we make it better? How do we rise above? How can we leverage the talents of those in our organization to take this and, not just go back to status quo, but give everybody the confidence and resources they need to truly be successful in whatever capacity they want to be.
Love that, Sabrina. Thank you. Heiko.
To just further on with that courage is, I think it's courage and character. I think it's a big issue that we're seeing in politics right now. Right, it's really more about maintaining vote rather than being, especially during COVID, being the leader that gets us through COVID. It's about like, how do we walk the thin line so I don't lose votes? Not to get political, but
yeah, I love some of these so high vibration, empathetic, great listeners, encouraging people to elevate. Thanks, Katia. And Brent, personality type, A versus B. Interesting. So how do you consider some of those personality theories? Yeah. And measuring output, developing connection. Peter. Oh, can't hear you.
I think you said it already, but the authenticity of kind of your nature and who you are, and selflessness as a leader, so that you're not thinking that you've got it all, but you're out there and you're able to prop up the team and the community, and to bring that in and listen. I mean, truly, like, people just seem to have lost the art of listening, or maybe that's something that's a DNA skill, and maybe some people have a better ability to do it and not, but those pieces are what are going to form, as we come out of this going forward, leaders that will attract other people because they actually see those value points, and that they recognize the value of building a team, and they can attract. And then the last thing I'll say is build a business that's got purpose and is profitable. I mean, how do we attract great people, put something into their kit bag that they can go home and talk proudly about with their friends and their families? I mean, that's the kind of business you want to build. So that's my 2 bits.
You remind me of there's a wonderful conversation between Brené Brown and James Rhee on the topic of kindness and math. And he talks a lot about this idea of like people and profitability. It's really lovely. And he has a very cool story. So I encourage you to check that out if you haven't seen it.
I understand what Peter's saying. It's purpose and sustainability. And you can use the word profit, and the alliteration's good there, but you need to be sustainable, and well said.
In my humble opinion, those 2 words are kind of together, because if you can have if you have profitability, now you've got something to build your engine on. If you don't have profitability, now you're a charity or you're something else that requires some sort of mechanism to make it last.
Okay, Alan, I'm going to give you the last go, and then I'm going to close out these slides, and then we'll go into rooms.
Motivation and engagement. I know we were talking in ours sort of about this sort of like cottage culture where, somebody builds this part over here, then they send the yarn over to somebody else and they turn it into a sweater, and, those kinds of things. So, but it's also like, because so many people are not necessarily where they want to be, how do you motivate them, when you can't see them all the time? How do you engage with them? Because we also want them not just to be there, converting oxygen into carbon dioxide. Is this fun for you? Is it, is there value in here? Are we helping you get to where you also want to be? Because that might not be here in this organization, but we also have to be able to motivate larger populations other than simply those of us that we see right here.
Right. Yeah. Great point. Yeah. So that exponential connection, and then across that context of all connected across all different locations and time zones. Awesome. Okay. So great words. I love where everyone is thinking. There is no silver bullet. So if you were looking for that today, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but what I want to put out there is proposing kind of a new way of thinking how we lead in the context of work. So if we think about the timeline that we've just gone through and examining those, Paleolithic emotions related to leadership, those medieval institutions that are responding to this godlike technology and the revolutions we're going through as humanity. And the common theme here is that our mindsets about work often shape our approach to how we engage humans in work. And what if we flipped it? What if instead of starting with context, we start with humans, so that our mindset about humans shapes our approach to how we work. And when we start with humans first, how might that look different? So instead of looking at context, we're looking at who we are as humans, and then we're building organizations, we're building situations, and we're responding to context in a way that makes sense for humans. And so I'll leave you with this, and that the future of leadership, when I think about where we are today, there's so many wonderful things. We've got vision and strategy. We focus on our intellectual capabilities and stimulation, this idea of responsibility and accountability, collaboration, caring, self-awareness, and inspiration. But what would it look like if we extended it and we started to focus more deeply on human? So from vision, we're looking at purpose. And we talked a lot, we've heard purpose here today, but in a world of uncertainty, we may not know where we're going to be in 5 years, but how do we then connect in with purpose and what we're trying to achieve, and then trust the journey? From strategy, harnessing the power of not really knowing where we're going to get to. How do we, go into intuitively this flexibility of managing the duality of our context, or more than just duality, but the many variables. This idea of intellectual stimulation. There's some really cool work from Annie Murphy-Paul around the extended mind, where she's starting to look at how humans have reached their capacity for cognitive development and thinking. We only have so much space in our working memories. And now it's about how do you connect to the body, where they've actually found research that if you use hand gestures, you'll be able to access your information more quickly and easily and be able to articulate that. So there's connections between the body. So how are we vulnerable with knowing when we don't know, and connecting to different forms of intellect? From being responsible, accountable, needing to have that control, and looking at it from an abundance mindset and being generous. Collaborative. Moving there from, root causes within systems to connected. We got Karen, I won't go through you can read the slides here. I'm happy to share these slides as well. Knowing the limits of our vulnerabilities, nurturing this idea of being self-aware, which is really important, but going deeper and confronting some of our deceptions, and in that rooted reflection, peeling back some of the layers of what society has us believe about what should be. What if an organization wasn't a triangle? What if it was a circle? So inspirational, about being present with the versions of other people, which is sort of back to that leadership version 4, to the power of something. We're all on our own journeys. We're all kind of learning at different speeds and paces. How do we be beyond empathy, but patiently compassionate with where people are at today? So if I were going to leave you with one thing, I think the future of leadership is feminine. And we all have some of these capabilities within us and these characteristics. And so how do we bring about some of these behaviors to that next level? So that is me. Any kind of quick questions I'm going to make while I make your breakout room, or comments?
I would love to connect afterwards and have a chat.
Yeah, I love coffees. Lots of coffee. So if anyone would love to connect and chat, I'd love to.
Actually, I think another session with you would be amazing, because I think that there's so much here.
Yes.
And it's really great to have group discussion. I'm wondering if maybe we could set up another something, but I would definitely be interested in meeting with you as well.
Let's go have a beer.
Fun,
Let's go have a beer instead.
Yeah.
And watch the hockey game.
Totally have a beer. Yeah.
And watch the hockey game.
Watch the hockey game too.
So Megan, it actually turned out really well. When you dropped off, just everyone had to step up. And I've never seen so much conversation in the chat of any session. Okay. So it actually got everyone to step up and take a lead. And then the topic was leadership. So it came together really well.
Well, that's perfect. It was not, it was unintended, but totally vulnerable here. So that's good. Okay. Do we want to spend the last kind of 3 minutes connecting in just for one round? Would you like to do that, just to say hello? Let's do a quick one. And then I've got the rooms ready here. Okay. We'll see you back here in a couple minutes. 10 seconds left. Is there any community announcements? And I'm also going to launch the poll here, the last poll.
Oh, it looks like Peter has something.
Go ahead, Peter. Oh, we can't hear you, Peter.
Still an opportunity to win $5,000 shopping spree at Ridley's Cycle. You could buy anything in their store for $5,000, or just add that to the $10,000 bike that you're going to buy. And you can get a ticket for $10. I put the link in and that's a great cause. We're raising money for the Children's Hospice. So that's a super good charity. We look after, frankly, we look after the kids so the parents can get away during a very tough time. And yeah, hopefully you can jump in there for a $10 ticket, or $100 gets you 30 tickets. There you go. And I'm
Nice.
also doing a Branch Out Foundation race around Lake Windermere if you want to join my team. The links are there. Thanks.
Cool.
Thanks, Peter.
Actually, Megan, something quick. You ended on the feminism note, and in our breakout room, people want to hear more about that, as well as perhaps linking it with the Indigenous community and what that leadership can do and what we can learn from methods like that.
Yeah, that'd be a great topic.
To be continued.
To be continued. Lots to talk about.
Are you in Calgary, Megan?
I am, yes. I'm in Calgary. Sait. That's Sait. Yeah.
Perfect. Earl's right beside you. There's a place
There
to
you
watch the
go.
hockey game and have
Yeah.
a beer.
Perfect. Everyone can join. It'll be awesome.
Trust Peter to know where the nearest beer is.
Yeah. I can tell you where it is. Jeff, you can jump in too.
Any other announcements? I know folks are dropping off now. I totally understand. We'll keep the room open for folks if they want to chat. No, thank you all so much. Appreciated the conversation with you.